Thomas Boivin. It's a pleasure to be here at your exhibition at Fondation A in Brussels. And it's thanks to your work, your amazing prints, beautifully framed, hung in this fantastic space.
Thank you. It's really, a pleasure and a privilege for me to be here and to be exhibited by the Fondation. Belleville is it used to be a city in the outskirts, a village, and then a city in the outskirts of Paris, and now it has been absorbed by. So it's just the name of an underground station, and it's also a very lively and vivid neighborhood in the northeast of Paris with a peculiar atmosphere, because it's less Haussmannian and built like the very downtown Paris that you see. You have the Colline de Belleville and the Plateau de Belleville, so the underground station is really at the bottom of the hill, and so there's more, I'd say a bit more sky, more space, parks. Life there has a different rhythm. So when I decided to become a photographer, I thought that's what I want to do. But I mean, walking around with a camera is really something perfect, because you can pretend that you're doing something and mostly you just walk around, and that's what I loved about it. And when you come back home, you perhaps have something to show. So I really took the habit of slowly doing the same walk every day, and I quickly decided that I wanted to make portraits like that. That was when I realized that the goal for me, like the achievement, would be to have this kind of quality of relationship with people that are people that I don't know anything about, and then you can really just ask for a picture and get a sense of intimacy within the photograph. So Belleville is just like the result of this habit and this way of trying to live in a space. I think my way of working is more, I rarely decide. I mostly, what I try to find is a daily habit that I can live with for a long time, and then the more time I spend doing a certain thing, the more it takes a shape, and there's a point where I can say, okay, that's what I want to do, but it's never the beginning of the work. Like, the beginning of the work is really, where is it that I can spend a lot of time just looking at things or asking people for a photograph, more than a goal that I would set up first straight. Well, there's the work that you have on the walls, and the work that is in the book. They're very close, although there are some variations. And it's mostly a mix between still lifes, few landscapes and portraits. And I think what you like, the journey that you can experience through the book or the walls is really my way of walking through and trying to look with the same quality of attention to little details and people. And so it's not a portrait. It's not a book that has that pretends to be saying something about something. It's more a lived experience in a certain place. And in that sense, it's not a book about Belleville. It's a work in Belleville. That doesn't. But there is a documentary aspect of it. But it's not the. Again, that's not the goal. Or I'm not trying to have, express a belief or an opinion, or even to be descriptive in a clinical way. I believe that the greatest works of art are really trying to shift your perception of the world through a way to relate to the world. If what you're doing, if you say it's my world, it's less. If it's a self-contained object, as you say, I think it's less moving. What I've been very some work of art, either novel or photography, that I've met like earlier when I discovered photography. I thought, oh, you can experience space, or you can relate to people that way. It was never, oh, this is the world of the photographer, but much more, oh, this is how the photographer approaches the world. And that's really like what I think is the most beautiful. And also, there's also an ethical aspect of it, because it's a lot of portraits. So I would never say that someone is part of my world. Like, this is an image of someone is just an image. But even within that context, the image of someone is not my world. I don't pretend to be necessarily kind of or loving, but accepting. That's really enough. That's more than enough. And at that moment, like who I am as a person, what I think as a person, what my emotion as a person is a thing. And when I photograph, at the moment when I photograph, I just try to welcome something or someone in a frame, and that's it. Yeah, I'd say that. Perhaps the strongest influence that you can perceive is more what's on the other room. It's Place de la République. Like Place de la République is really, view camera portraits of people in an open space, and J. Joy Ross is one of the absolute masters. But the North America, I would say that there's a strong Anglo-Saxon North American influence, and this tradition is well represented in the collections of the foundation. I don't really know if Astrid has some work by Mark Steinmetz, and that's not. I don't think so. And he was really the first one whose work I came across, and I was like, you can do that. But that doesn't mean he's the most important for me, but it was really the starting point, like especially in Greater Atlanta, the South trilogy. That I saw a few photographs, and I was really deeply moved that someone can do that, run into a stranger and has this psychological quality of in a portrait. Usually people in portrait, they're stiff, they're closed, that you see that they are being photographed, and with him everything's transparent, there's a flow. So it's, mostly this mostly North American Anglo-Saxon tradition that influenced me in many ways. Nicholas Nixon is one. I don't know if Astrid has works by Chris Killip, but that's also someone I would put there. And what the foundation I think represents most in Astrid's choice is a very works of artists who indeed try to have a deep and prolonged relationship with the world or the subject. At first, I experienced photography through books, and I only thought about books. But I always first developed and then printed, partly for economical reasons. I couldn't afford to have all of my roles processed by someone else or printed. Re-experience your image over and over again, trying to bring the most out of it. It changes your relationship to contrast and details, and shifts your attention to the quality of light in a way that the immediate response of a digital tool, I think, would hardly give. So it's really a school of, une école du regard, on dirait en français, a school of looking, I think. In that, it's essential. But then afterwards comes really the pleasure of experiencing a good print, which is again a way to serve the scene or the image of the person, the quality of craft that you put in trying to take the picture. You try to bring it all the way up to what's on the wall, there's a continuity of care, and that's really amazing. So what's on the wall is 24 portraits of mostly young people in this big square, pretty central in Paris, that is called Place de la République. So the name in itself says something, because it immediately evocates the idea of a society, of French society as a whole. Something again that I really appreciate in Judith Joy-Ross's oeuvre is that she tries to bring everyone, and so that was a very good place for that, by the name and by the reality of that it's a place where you can find a lot of different people gathering and coming and passing by. But what you see now is not how I started. I started by taking photographs in a way that is very close to what Belleville looks like. And actually, it's very close. Like Place de la République is, 500 meters away from Belleville. But so I started in 2018, and more I focused on individuals, partly because it's easy to focus on individuals with a medium format, with a rather large wide lens in an empty space. You have one person and the space around, and the space is empty, so it's still one person. If you try to do that, Place de la République, there's always someone scratching head or doing something weird in the background, so you have to cut that away. So I switched to view cameras and a longer lens to really remove all of these things that that would ruin the frame, basically. And that's what gave the look of it. It's the way I adapted to a different situation. But then it ended up being a very as wide as can portrait of the young French people gathering there, as wide as I could. And actually, they're not all French at all. It's a big metropolitan city, so people come from everywhere. And I'm not done yet. I want to have 40 to 50. I have hundreds of portraits, but I want to have 40 or 50 portraits that you can really want to look at again, twice or more, and remember. And that takes a lot of time and effort. So I think I have at least a year ahead, a small year ahead. But it's always, I never do one thing There's, in winter, people are in their coat, they're cold, they don't want to stop, so I do something else. And depending on the day, if I'm too tired to take a portrait, I will just have my square camera and take still lifes, because it's so much energy to say to someone, do you mind if I take your photograph? That enough eats you so much. So there are days when I can't. So you have Place de la République is an ongoing project, but others ongoing projects are ongoing at the same time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.